got a lot to talk about today, so let's get things started here. Good morning. My name is Kylle Jordan here with Medical Ally. I am the global principal for the organization, which means I am primarily working with our international partners like Investissement Quebec, the Quebec government, with whom we have a fantastic partnership for bringing Canadian companies to the US market. Within that partnership, we have a conversation today with Dr. Fred Moll, and I'm the CEO of Kinova, Fred Deguire. See, I knew I was going to do it. Anyway, we were having a conversation about whether or not to pronounce it the French way or the American way earlier. And of course, our partners here with Johnson & Johnson in Canada, Geneviève Lavertu is here. But first and foremost, thank you for joining us this morning. Medical Ally is just excited to have this conversation and this partnership. So I'd like to hand it over to our partner, Mario Limoges here, to kick off this conversation.
Hi, bonjour à tous. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry, it seems like my camera is not working right now in Chicago, out of Chicago. But anyway, la délégation du Québec à Chicago et Investissement Québec International sont fiers d'être réunis avec vous dans le cadre d'un partenariat extrêmement stratégique dans le secteur des sciences de la vie. Nous sommes en effet associés pour une seconde année consécutive à la Medical Ally Association pour différentes initiatives visant à appuyer le développement de nos entreprises québécoises sur le marché américain et incluant, entre autres, la mise en œuvre d'un programme d'accompagnement spécialisé pour une cohorte de 10 entreprises innovantes. Ce partenariat hautement stratégique a ainsi pour objectif de promouvoir et de propulser l'expertise québécoise en sciences de la vie aux États-Unis. The Quebec Government Office in Chicago and Investissement Québec International are proud to partner again this year with Medical Ally Association, a well-renowned organization in the medtech industry, to accelerate the U.S. market development of 10 innovative companies from Quebec. These companies will be at the core of a trade mission that will take place in Minneapolis on December 7th and 8th. We sure hope to meet with some of you there. We are also honored to count on the support of a world-leading company in the medtech industry, Johnson & Johnson, who's the main sponsor of this year's program and today's event. Today's panel is also an opportunity to put a spotlight on a great example of Quebec's expertise in advanced technology with Kinova, one of the most innovative medical robotics companies in the world. We hope that the experiences that will be shared today by our guest speakers will be beneficial for other entrepreneurs who may follow in their footsteps. Thanks to all of our partners for their support. Merci encore une fois à Medical Ally, Johnson & Johnson et à nos panélistes pour leur précieuse collaboration et bon séminaire. Thank you.
Bonjour. Hello, this is Geneviève Lavertu from Johnson & Johnson Medical Technology. We are very pleased to offer you today the testimony and the storytelling of two great pioneers in medical robotics and how they came to partner. So the storytelling will take very much the form of a dialogue, and there will be a 15-minute Q&A section at the end. So during the dialogue, I encourage you to put your questions in the Q&A box, and we will address them during the 15 minutes at the end. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce your two speakers today. So Charles Degure, CEO of Kinova Robotics, is the passionate visionary behind Kinova, a leader in the modern robotics revolution. The organization is experiencing fast growth by driving robotic adoption in multiple end markets, such as medical, industrial, and academics, while making sure to keep a human-first approach. Charles's achievements earned him the Governor General's Innovation Award, among other awards. And he started out as a humble man of science in his entrepreneurial debut. He developed Kinova during his bachelor's degree in electrical engineering at École de Technologie Supérieure in Montreal. And after studying health technologies and innovation management, Charles pursued entrepreneurship studies at MIT. By that time, his first product, a robotic arm named Jaco, was launched, and he will tell you the rest of the story himself. And we also have Dr. Frederick Moll, He serves as Chief Development Officer of Johnson & Johnson's Digital Surgery Group. And prior to joining Johnson & Johnson, Dr. Moll founded Auris Health. And in 1995, he founded Intuitive Surgical, now listed on NASDAQ. Dr. Moll earned an MD from the University of Washington School of Medicine, an MS in Management from Stanford University's Sloan Program, and a BA degree from the University of California at Berkeley. So without further delay, because I'm already delighted for you to tell your story, I will ask you, from your perspective, when you first met, how far along were you in each of your respective companies? And what did it look like from an employee standpoint, from a technology standpoint, before you even met? So I'll give the floor to Charles and then ask Dr. Moll to follow.
Thank you, Geneviève. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. So we were not that far along when we first met. We were sub 20 people. I think we were 18 full-time employees at that time, really focused on our first medical device. So the JACO robotic arm. So it's a medical device class 1, mainly exporting in Europe. And we've been developing and supporting many research labs worldwide. At that time, I think we were in 10 countries worldwide. And then we got, to really focus on the surgical part and got to meet with Dr. Moll. So I'll let him describe where they were back then. But for us, we were just moving in our new space in Beaubriand, expanding the office floor. So on the first meeting with Dr. Moll, we were in the right momentum. Let's put it that way.
And Dr. Moll, where was Auris Health at?
Yeah, thanks. And good morning, everybody. So I think, we were largely in the same position at Auris that Charles described. We were less than 20 people. And really where we were that we had a very clear idea on an opportunity to target the improvement of certain techniques and medical intervention, one specifically, and because of the need for capability that didn't exist, the sort of central technology challenge was to match robotic capability and technique with the clinical problem we were trying to address. And so we were very early, and we were in need of creating a capability that involved a technology that we thought that we were probably not going to be capable or willing to develop, and so began looking for opportunities in the robotic space, and tried to connect with companies that were in the robotic space that might be willing to help us in our journey.
Thank you. So for the starting companies that are looking at what their perspectives could be like and how big they can dream, I'd like all of you to visualize what it would be like if you were in that position. And for Charles and Fred to describe how they met, how the connection came about, what was it, and how would you recognize it as a startup when something so transformative can happen? Charles, please.
Yeah, for us, it was quite fast to get the focus and our attention. First of all was the momentum we saw at Auris. They were hiring the right people. The type of question they were asking were deeper in the technology side than most of other surgical company we were entertaining to collaborate with. And it quickly, you know, within the first month of collaboration, it was clear for us we would invest in that business. You know, basically that was a very strong feeling that me and my partner Louis Joseph had. I'm like, you know, if we were not starting our own business, we would certainly invest in Auris and in Fred and his team. That was for sure. And after that was the challenge that was brought up to us. It felt like everything we've been developing up to that point was going to make us more efficient, more, you know, really the right technology, the right teams, the right capacity to get on their challenge. And the more they were describing the specific of their challenge, you know, how to make a compact robots, how to make those robots work together, have multiple robot in a small and compact form factor. We've been preparing for that for the last 6 years before we met. So really the timing we felt is good, and the bottom line was the all-star team that we were collaborating. You know, on first I said I would definitely invest in that company, and second I would have hired every single guy I met during those first interviews and meetings. So that for me was a good sign. It wasn't the case with all of our customer back then, and we had 5 others surgical opportunities at that moment, and we knew we would have capacity to really focus only on one. And if I had only one to pick, Fred and his team was definitely the one.
And just to complete as well, was it a cold call? Was it a trade show? Was it
No,
how did the meet cute happen?
You know, gold old relationship from partners we've been helping for some years. So we've been helping supporting researchers because we believe that the future of robotic would need more research, more development. So we've been supporting researchers in university. It wasn't always profitable, but you know, we were helping them achieve a bit more every year. And the Auris team went to university to look what was the latest, the greatest. And 3 of those universities that they went to visit were using our technology to do their latest development. So this is how we were put in contact. And from that point, it pushed on. So, you know, be there, support your partners in the field, and might not be that opportunity, but the opportunity they bring to the table for you, it will be very profitable.
And Dr. Moll, from your perspective, when we talked about this meeting, I think that you had one of your engineers who was scouting, and he came back and said, you got to take a look at this company. I think that at first there was some trepidation as to how substantive the company and the technology were. Would you like to tell the story from that perspective as well?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we were really a company looking for a technology partner to start off with, which is why I had my engineers scouring the world, trying to figure out who would be the optimal partner for us in filling the big gap that we have, where we didn't want to build a robot, and but a robot was a big piece of the puzzle and the clinical opportunity or clinical solution that we saw that we wanted to pursue. And so I did have, you know, more than one engineer out talking to whomever they could they decided was worth talking to, and Kinova sort of rose to the top actually pretty quickly for a couple of different reasons. One was, as Charles mentioned, they had some robots in academic institutions that were not necessarily you know, commercial product that were fixed in stone. They were part of a, you know, development program in an academic setting to investigate the use of robots in different applications. So sort of right off the bat, we were identified that although Kinova was a small company with limited resources, they were doing, they were trying hard to get into the mix of people that were pushing the envelope on, what can you do with a robot? So that was, it was immediately apparent that they were doing interesting things. But what it really came down to was after some degree of interaction with Charles and his team, it was very clear, the difference between Kinova and the others that we talked to. Kinova said, when you ask them a question, most of the time it was, yes, we could probably do that. Whereas most of the time with other more established robotics companies, the answer was, no, we probably couldn't do that, or we wouldn't want to do that. And so it was really, again, as Charles said, from our side, it was really more about the people and the belief that Kinova, although, fairly early, small, like we were, they were sort of a can-do organization that would be responsive with a project that was by no means clear as to what the robot had to be or do. And so so it was at the end of the day sort of all about the people. And so I think very similar to what Charles described.
So speaking all about the people, Charles, you were working on the university projects with your various academic partners. You get this call through some of the research projects. You say, okay, let me send my business development guy to San Francisco, Francois, to check it out. He comes back and he says, Charles, drop everything. And then later on, Dr. Moll comes over and visits very early on. So tell us what that felt like when there was that and the decisions you had to make and how you had to work it out with your various partners.
Yeah, so upon visit of Dr. Moll, there was this project. We were already, me and my partner falling in love with the project and the vision of the product. And then Dr. Moll came in, got to know him a bit better, and then it was clear, we want to learn from this team. We want to learn from Dr. Moll. We want to work with them, because we've been saying at Kinova for some time, our vision is, let's apply robotic as a tool so that people can do more. And we've been doing so in assistive device for people using power wheelchair to extend their radius of action and make them more independent. But with the surgical tool and improving the path of care was actually saving life. So for us, it was a continuity in our vision that we had for robotic, really allowing this awesome technology of robots being able to reach its full potential. So that was, the vision was so well aligned that we were like, okay, we will have some hard decision to do, but the direction is the right one. And this is how we started to prepare our board, our investors back then, because they were on a model and we were all on a model. Let's have a few big partners in the surgical world to divide our risk and make sure we are part of most of the platform we can. But quickly, when we saw the intensity that would be required to follow the momentum that was there at Auris, and again, they were sub 20 people, but they were raising money at a fast rate. And we saw the previous companies from Dr. Moll, and we knew that it wasn't going to be a slow and steady boat ride. It was going to be a fast-paced, very intense ride. So we start to prepare our board, saying, we might need to go all in. We might need to really focus there. And we did our homework. We did the business case very strongly. And we put the contracts in place with Auris, and we worked our way into this all-in model where we had to pause a lot of the other development that we were doing. When I say a lot, it's almost everything else needed to be paused in order for us to follow the pace and make sure that, we would never be the one slowing down this very important project. But that, didn't came from day one. Me and my partner were aligned from day one, but aligning, all the team, all the partners, all the investors, the board, to say, guys, I know the plan is changing, but it's worth it. And let's all get on board. And from that day on, any new investor that was coming in, any new expert that was coming in, they knew how important this program was for us, and they knew that we needed to commit to it. So it was was clear for us, became clear within the first few months for all of our team that this had to be the priority, and we really don't regret it today. But it's a process to realign everybody. But when you find the right partner, the right opportunities, like, don't be scared to go all in.
So it was a very bold proposition. And at that point, I suppose it was resting on a very nascent relationship. And I think that, Dr. Moll, that's one of the things that you've emphasized very heavily during our preparations, is how important developing and building the relationship over the next few years was going to be. Here you had Kinova and Charles putting a lot of their capital, both social, economic, human, on this particular project. And Dr. Moll, I think that your primary focus was, yes, the technology, but even above all, making sure that the partnership relationship was nurtured and growing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely necessary that we had a good working relationship with Kinova, because there was a lot to lose on both sides. Charles described, they had to make a choice to not do other things. We had to make a choice. I mean, we needed a robot, and if we committed to Kinova and really focused on that relationship, it was unsuccessful, we would have been unsuccessful. So good entrepreneurs sort of weigh the odds, but at the end of the day, you got to make a very tough choice to say, this is the direction we're going. It has risk, but this is the best bet to get to where we want to go. And if you have a partner in making that bet, you better work as hard as you can to build a relationship that you can trust. Because if you don't trust and build a successful relationship, your business is at risk. It's very difficult to walk back as big a decision as this was for both companies. So there was enormous amount of risk on both sides with regard to to the choice to work together. And so quite honestly, we sort of I think realized we both had to make the relationship work, and both worked pretty hard on that.
Very good. So Charles, you're all in and you're working, and for a period of time, each of your companies is growing. Later on, Kinova Robotics takes even more expansion. So would you give us an overview now of the various different divisions of Kinova Robotics and how you managed to then expand again after that phase of intense focus?
Yes. So, today we've evolved working with Oris, working with Johnson & Johnson, and our relationship, continuously expand from research, development, manufacturing. And today we really have, this partnership that allows us to go through the challenge of supply chain, go through the challenge of finding the right expertise. How can we jointly improve the path of care? And that remained the core of the vision of Dr. Moll and of Johnson & Johnson. It's no longer a development project, it's an active product that we're continuously expanding the horizon. So this growing relationship has allowed Kinova to really have a foundation in the surgical world. So yes, it did came at a cost of focus, but honestly, looking back, even if we had the choice to take more than one product, more than one project in this new field, we should not have taken it. So I'm pretty pleased that we were able to focus. Today, I believe the entire Quebec and Canadian ecosystem really benefits from that relationship and from that focus. We have supplier, our arms are made in Quebec, are made in Canada, and we have suppliers from coast to coast in Canada, and they all benefit from that growing relationship with Johnson & Johnson. Not only that, but also like groups like the Canadian Robotic Council that we are part of growing, and the ecosystem to develop further technology. We have a direct path to apply those technology in surgery with one of the, if not the best partner worldwide to do so, which is Johnson & Johnson. So we've built all of that ecosystem because to do innovation is really a team sport. And I can clearly say it, we had a very strong team with J&J and Auris, but we also back home here in Quebec have this growing ecosystem that is thrilling, that is empowering us to be this partner. So, today Kinova is, we've passed 280 people from this 18 people when we started. We did multiple round of financing. Today we launch robotic technology and robotic solution in the professional world, in the industrial world, which allow us to validate components and test technology before we can bring those technology back to the surgical space. So we're proofing those technology, and then we can use our partner J&J to accelerate the integration of new features, new robotic features in the surgical. So really, I think we've built a good model of a long-term partnership, and we're committing to that model for quite a long time in front of us now.
Very good, thank you. And Dr. Moll, we talked a little bit about if you had some lessons learned that you would want to share with all of our audience members here, some of whom are at the start of their journey, some of whom are like Charles before that initial meeting. What are some of the things that you would tell them about communicating, the importance of over communication in your partnership, and perspective of how to dream big?
Yeah. Well, look, I think you've heard a story of a successful partnership that combines sort of the right technology, the right people, with the right motivation to work together to enjoy mutual success. And I think that sort of the fabric that sort of held the the partnership together. I mean, there's a lot of different things, but ultimately, it's the alignment of interests between the partners, and a sort of subcategory of that I think is so important is that both partners, if they're working together to produce a product for a market, that they both really understand the customer need. And I think Kinova didn't just say, okay, we'll build you what you want, what you need as part of your system. They really dug into and tried to understand on a more fundamental level, what is the market really asking for? Because and I think that helped them understand sort of our concerns, our needs, and I think guided their ability to really get on the same page as to how are we going to mutually succeed in this endeavor. So I think it's oftentimes Kinova was never just a supplier of robots. They were a partner in a market that they understood, and they were constantly trying to be smarter and smarter about what we needed, because it's and how that is the same or different from what the customer needed. And so that sort of willingness to not just understand your piece of the puzzle, but how that piece of the puzzle flows through to customer needs, I think is so important in having two partners get on the same page. Because if you can understand what ultimately the buyer why what the buyer wants and why they would buy, then it's a lot easier to come to alignment on how to make progress in the partnership. So I think it's an extraordinarily important piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Moll, you've been in the field of surgical robotics probably since the day you were born, or it seems like it, in multiple different incarnations. So you've seen the evolution from the non-existence of the field of surgical robotics all the way to where we are today, with immense developments and even specializations between different types of robotic assisted surgeries. Are there some perspectives that you would like to share with us about the industry at this point?
Well, it's really interesting. It just sort of goes along the line with understanding your customer. So the very beginning of Intuitive Surgical, I had a guy named John Freund who helped me with the licensing of a really early stage telemanipulation technology out of the Stanford Research Institute. And they had the idea that maybe it could somehow work into the world of surgery. They weren't very far along, but they did have the ability to sort of have a system that at one end of the room you moved and the instruments moved at the other end of the room. It wasn't for the kinds of things that Intuitive uses it for, but it was a beginning. And John's father happened to be a general surgeon, and John asked him to come out and take a look at the system and opine on whether it might be useful in minimally invasive surgery. And John's father was old enough so that he was someone who really believed in classic surgical technique, and looked at the robot and got in a very heated argument with John about whether robotics makes any sense in surgery or would ever make any sense in surgery. And I had to leave the room because they were sort of screaming at each other saying, "You don't understand. No, you don't understand." And it was, it's a lesson in sort of how innovation happens. It happens in small bites, because if you try and push too big a change all of a sudden without sort of bringing people along, it's hard. It takes time. And, I think it's a lesson in, if you want to change the world, you have to iterate on that change. You have to build that change. It doesn't happen overnight. And, but if you understand the problem, meaning, and in this case, it was, surgeons are invested in a certain capability that they believe is really defines, what they've done with their life. They've developed this, capability that they do with their hands, and to move them off of that onto a robot requires understanding that obstacle, sort of, not only from a technology standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, and from a sort of strategic standpoint. So I'll leave you with that.
Fantastic. And Charles, anything that you'd like to add from your perspectives in terms of the evolution of the acceptance of robotics in the medical field, since you've been at that a while now as well?
It will remain a challenge. We're still early in the adoption of robotic, not just in surgery, but in most of medical application. I think there's some, foundational trends like the labor shortage and making accessible cares worldwide that will require more automation, more productivity, and it's just increasing every year. And the capacity of robotic is just increasing also every year. So the pressure is increasing every year, the ability is increasing every year. So it's just a matter of time. And once you understand that, it's to understand, which market will adopt first. So it's more of, setting the priorities, who are going to be the early adopters and who won't be the early adopters. For our JCO robot arm, our first market was the Netherlands. So from day one, we were a net exporter. I sold my first robot for a wheelchair user in the Netherlands a year and a half before I sold one in Quebec. And still today, Germany and Netherlands are, 10 times bigger markets for me than Canada would ever be. So go where the other adopters are, and find them worldwide. Go where the partners there are. Dr. Moll was on the West Coast. We were in Montreal. Borders didn't really matter at that point. So you really need to go work with the best wherever they are and work with the markets that are willing to adopt. There's always markets willing to adopt. You just need to find them and to incentivize them to go in that direction.
Very good. Well, I see that we have a few questions from our participants that are coming into our Q&A box, and I might take this opportunity then to dive into some of our audience questions already. So one first question comes from Michelle Zoromsky, and the question is, how did you build that trust so quickly? And I'll give the floor first to Charles and then Dr. Moll.
I think it's especially in today's time, just showing up. The fact that Dr. Moll came to our office, and it was quite busy, very busy man. I still want to thank him for that. But he showed up, and from all the opportunities that we had in surgery, many people invited us to go visit them. But he took the time to come see if we were a real company and come see, how advanced we were. But he did show up, and after that, it just reminded us that we can build portion of our relationship at a distance, but being there on site, supporting them for their key events, and being very transparent. From early on, it was not about negotiating the most optimal deals. There was many components of our contract that were suboptimal, but we were very transparent about it, and I was transparent about where our business was, what was our real capacity and challenge to increase capacity. And they were very transparent on, what we need to fix first, and where we need to go faster, where we were ahead. So transparency, showing up, basic things really helped us build the trust. And as Dr. Moll said, the alignment was very strong. So once you have alignment, you might have some bump in the road, but the direction was the right one. And we were aligning on that vision.
And Dr. Moll, earlier on when we discussed, you emphasized the importance of showing up, of working side by side, physically in person on site, and also the how in the past you might have been a little bit more impatient to get the result, and maybe wish that at that time earlier on, you might have devoted more time to communication and partnership building and relationship building. So would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, no, I think it's, I think Charles did a good job of describing sort of the importance of communication and really, I mean, it's sort of the idea of putting yourself in someone else's shoes. If you actually show up and see, which I did, saw Kinova, where it was, how it worked, what their, capabilities were, how they were organized, and really understood rather than, I mean, it's in a partnership, it's kind of useless to demand things that aren't possible, and just, demand that your partner do this or do that. If they're not in the position to do it, it's, you're kind of wasting your time. So it really demands that you really understand who they are, where they live, how do they work, and what are reasonable expectations for the partnership. And if there are, and so that's sort of table stakes. You understand what their capabilities are, and then if you don't constantly communicate, then even their abilities to deliver, maybe say start to take a left or right turn, that because of a lack of clarity with regard to what the proper direction is, or what's the fastest pathway to where you both want to go. And so it's I think say it over and over again, and probably still don't over communicate as much as it would be helpful in situations where you're depending on someone else, both understanding and delivering something that's vitally important to your entity making progress. So over communication is, I mean, you can't over communicate, I guess, is what I've learned, and certainly learned the hard way in a number of instances where a simple miscommunication propagated sort of exponentially to causing, big problems. Not that didn't happen with Kinova, but it has happened with other situations in my career. And you can kind of look back and see that if there was more transparency, there was more understanding in, the mutual objectives of the combined entities work, that you could have avoided an enormous amount of wasted time and effort and money.
And I'm assuming freight relationships due to the misunderstanding as well, sometime.
Yeah.
So there's another question that is coming in, and it was about how did you, Kinova, get to understand so well your B2B healthcare customers' needs and buying decisions? Like, how did you make sure that you had the right market fit?
Yeah, so I did answer some of the question already, but you do your homework. You do a lot of interview, you do a lot of calls, meeting in person, but you go specific with those questions. And I hope that you had time to build some relationship before you have to answer those questions. It always helps. Like, you can build advisory team, and on your advisory team or board, you can get people with that specific knowledge. So once you know what you're searching, you can start to structure. So if you're looking for the decision model or patterns of your partners, then you can go get specific advisors, or reach out to past employees or past interns from a specific companies. When we were quite small, we didn't have that good of a process. but it was me and my partner directly showing up, being on site, and discussing with all of the teams that is out there, and really doing our homework. So, Dr. Moll was saying, we have this path for to robotize bronchoscopy. I've learned everything I could learn on bronchoscopy. Therefore, I understood better, what their decision process was, because I understood the customer better. And each time I had the opportunity to go in the wet lab, to go see clinical trials, and still thank to Dr. Moll for allowing me to be part of those sessions. But, I was listening, I was getting all of that information. And the more expert you become on your partner's need, the easier it is for you to understand, what are the specific features that will make a difference in his life. And if you're well aligned on the end user need, then the decision process from your customer, from your partners, become very clear, because you have the same vision. Let's create the most value possible for the end users. So again, a lot of homework to be done on your part. You can always learn more on the customers and on the end users need.
Mhm. And Dr. Moll, I guess that was possibly part of your path and decision as well, to bring Kinova and Charles and their collaborators physically in front of the end users as much as possible to accelerate their path. Was that something that you consciously undertook?
Yeah, no, I think we didn't have to push it too hard. I think Charles was very astute from the beginning, that if he didn't understand, the end customer and what was most important to them, he'd be less able to thoroughly understand, sort of the what we were asking him to do, which was customize a robot to fit, not, moving boxes around, but moving organs around. And it has its own sort of unique needs and capabilities. And if you can see, what's what the clinician is doing today, and what the challenges are, and how robotics has both advantages and disadvantages in certain areas, you're just going to be smarter and more effective in working towards an optimal solution.
Great. So we are getting close to the top of the hour. I don't see any other. Oh, sorry. I stand corrected. One last question, and then I'll give you the closing words. So we have a question from John Beecham, who asks, what approaches do you find most effective to convince physicians to use these robotic innovations, as well as build physician confidence in the use of these robotic innovations? That's probably the billion-dollar question.
Yeah, that's we don't have enough time to answer that. But I would say one very important piece, and Charles can give his own response to this, but one very important piece is you got to start with the right people. And there's a small subsegment of the surgical world that really is open to challenging innovation. Look, surgeons do the same thing the same way over and over again for a reason, which is they want to get as good as they possibly can get about doing that thing. And so to ask them to step outside their comfort zone and do something different is a big ask, because they're not only, it's more work for them to learn a new technique. It, by definition, creates risk to the patients, who is, and it's their responsibility to keep their patients safe and do the best job they possibly can. So it's a delicate sort of balance of feeling, protecting sort of the interest of the patient, and progressing with the technique in hopes of improving it. So it's the right person, that you have to find, right people you have to find that are willing to do that in a very controlled, responsible way that you think can give you insight into, not, and this is what's the trickiest, not what is necessarily their specific sort of opinion on what to, how you could do things differently, but sort of be able to glean information from their experience and try and get more of a consensus sort of view of what a proper direction is, because everybody's going to have an opinion and everybody's going to have a different experience. And what's both challenging and fundamentally extremely interesting in doing the work that we do is to have a part in making those tough decisions on what makes the most sense with regard to innovation, and what's best for the patient, what's best for the clinician, what's best for, and can it be a business? Because if it isn't a business, then you're not going to innovate, because nobody's going to, it won't survive as a technology because it can't make money.
So extremely fine and sophisticated communication and relationships to be developing in parallel with multiple stakeholders.
100%.
Before we close out, I would like to give Charles and yourself, in that order, the opportunity for a few closing remarks before we say goodbye to our attendees.
Yeah, thank you very much. So thanks for the question also, and don't hesitate to connect directly on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to support everybody on the call. We're one ecosystem, and we all want to improve, part of care and the innovation. So please don't hesitate to reach out. It was a pleasure for me to discuss about our long-term relationship with Dr. Moll, with Oris, and with now J&J for the past few years. And I said it in the past, going in all in was the best call we made, and I strongly encourage, motivate all of you to not hesitate to go all in when you find the right partners. And we were discussing about adoption. I think it's the same thing for your end users. Is once you find a champion, make them win, and if they win, you will win, and everybody is going to be successful. So everything we said about partnership between two businesses can be applied between, the businesses, the solution, and the physician and the clinician that is going to use it. You need the right champion, you need to over communicate, and you need to go all in. So for me, I'm quite pleased of the choice we made in the past. Would I change some of them? I think I would even go faster and further than we did. But we still have room in front of us to do a further partnership for that. And I'm really happy of all the value creation that we've did for the end users, for the patient at the end of the day. So if your aim is valuable, if your aim is and your vision is to create value for the patient, value for our communities, you will always find people like Dr. Moll and myself to support you and to push harder with you. So thanks for taking the time to listen to us, and don't hesitate to reach out. I'll let the final word to Dr. Moll.
Thanks, Charles. And, first of all, I want to start by thanking Charles for his, for being willing to enter, the partnership. And as he says, go all in on it. We wouldn't, I don't think either one of us would have been in the position, certainly Oris wouldn't have been in the position it was if he hadn't made that decision. So, I owe him a lot for being the partner that didn't exist elsewhere. I mean, I don't know where we would have been if we didn't find Kinova, but it's been not an easy journey, but one that, is very enjoyable. And I think I'd, just end by saying, trying to make an advertisement for others to, to get involved in the business of medical technology. It's, at the end of the day, what's most important to everyone is their health first. And there is just so much to do in medtech, and there's so many ways to participate, and the ability to kind of make a difference in patient lives is I feel very blessed to have been involved in that endeavor for many years, and sort of wouldn't have traded the decisions I made on what to do for anything, because I feel like it was extraordinarily rewarding, and hope that others will pursue medical technology in a entrepreneurial way, because the entrepreneurs are the ones that that are going to make big changes going forward. It's I love Johnson & Johnson, but Johnson & Johnson is a company where innovation certainly happens, but it not necessarily at the rate of speed that smaller, more agile companies can accomplish that, and that's just part of the ecosystem of medtech, and it's an exciting one that I think is going to get more exciting every year. And so would encourage you to stay close to medical technology. It ultimately benefits all of us, and it's a lot of fun. So thank you.
Well, with this, I would like to thank our panelists today for giving us a masterclass in entrepreneurship and growth scale up for small companies like Kinova was early on. Thank you for your candor. And I would also like to thank the partners who organized this series, Investment Quebec International, and specifically Rachel Bonville, as well as sorry, our Medical Alley partners, Frank Jaskulski, Tyler Mason, Kylle Jordan, and thank you as well to our trade officer in Chicago, Mario Limoges, for making this session possible.
Thank you, Geneviève. Happy Halloween, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Happy Halloween. Bye.